Today we are talking about the movie Heretic.
Yes, 2024 psychological thriller starring Hugh Grant, Sophie Thatcher, Chloe East, and Topher Grace.
Oscar worthy Topher Grace.
Role of a lifetime, Topher Grace. So this is a movie that was written and directed by Scott Beck and Brian Woods. They previously wrote and direct 65, and they're credited as writing Quiet Place 1 through 3, as well as The Boogeyman, a Stephen King adaptation that came out, I think, 2 years ago. So this movie tells the story of two young religious women who are drawn into a game of cat and mouse in the house of a madman.
Mr. Reed.
Mr. Reed. I couldn't stop thinking about that either. I'm glad I'm not alone in that.
Mr. Reed.
Yeah, so, okay, off the hop. What are your thoughts on Heretic? Did you like the movie? Did you not like the movie?
I did like the movie. I have a habit of getting angry after I watch some thrillers where there's some violence or, things like that. And we watched it pretty late at night. So I had to sleep on it. The next day I took it for what it was, a movie.
Yeah.
And I did like it. I found it to be different. I think we spoke about this before, but it reminded me a little bit of Split.
Yep. Yeah.
Mixed with Barbarian.
Yeah, a little bit of that for sure. It's that captive in the basement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The trailer, which I appreciated, didn't give much away, so I really didn't know. I'm a big thriller fan. I like mysteries. I like solving things, and I find sometimes with like kidnapping movies and whatnot, there's it's not so much you're figuring out kind of motives, etc. You're more just figuring out how is someone going to escape this place. Whereas this movie, a bit more to it than that. A bit more questions. It's a lot of depth, religious depth, and
I didn't see a single trailer for this movie, so I had no idea what it was going into it. I know you had wanted to see it, and a friend of mine had recommended me seeing it and gave a little bit of the content of the movie away, but not enough to spoil it in any way at all. So I went in pretty much almost completely blind and fresh, and was pleasantly surprised. Very interesting movie. A lot different than I kind of thought it would be at the outset. I thought we were in for kind of that typical, like, oh, he's going to chain them up in the basement, and he's a creepy weirdo.
That's what I was trying to say.
And it was kind of, flipped that on its head. He's certainly welcomes them into his home under this false pretense that he wants to discuss religion and the Mormon faith, to kind of get them in there and lock them in. But he doesn't really quite restrain them. He never locks them up. He never physically kind of attacks them until much, much later at the end when things go awry. It's all kind of predicated on this game that he set up where everywhere they're going through the house is determined by the choices that they've made. So he's kind of crafted the situation to ensure that the choices they make lead them in a very specific direction towards a conclusion that he's already worked out.
Yes.
So a bit different where it's, he's very, we talked about this, he's not really off-putting. He's not this horribly evil, malicious guy. He comes across as very charming, very intelligent.
Very Hugh Grant.
Yep. Elegant, eloquent, well-spoken. Mm-hmm. So it's a little disarming when things start kind of going off the rails. Which they do, and I found it to be kind of interesting the way it started. I found it was very grounded. And then it started getting into some territory where I was like, that's weird. It's taking a bit of a right turn. And then it got into even weirder territory where it took an even further right turn to kind of just bring it all back into the end and kind of reground it in that world that they built.
Yeah.
So specifically what I'm talking about, I'm curious what your thoughts on this. I was kind of in one frame of mind watching the movie. Then at one point, he lures them in to a deeper level of his basement.
Yeah.
Where he proclaims that he's discovered a prophet who's going to die and be resurrected and confirm the existence of an afterlife or not. And at that point, I was like, okay, this is weird, because they hadn't really touched on anything supernatural, and they strongly hint or try to make you believe that that is in fact a woman that's been resurrected.
Yeah.
So at that point, I was kind of like, oh, this is different than where I thought it was going to go.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be the psychological back and forth. I thought it was them going to try and escape and trying to distract him and argue with him. But it took a really strange turn there. Kind of curious what your thoughts were on that.
I thought she was his wife at first when she came down the stairs. I'm like, she does exist. Here's your blueberry pie.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe he like kidnapped his wife, held her captive. Then it's one of those movies that just like, why I liked it. It's like every little room has its own. It's like they go in the first room, the door is locked, and they have to go down the hallway. And they go in that room, and there's 2 doors, and then 2 doors lead to different things. And every, I don't know, it just gets revealed. Each curtain lifts.
Yeah.
And yeah, when you see her like feet walking down the stairs, I'm going, oh my God, that's the wife. And it's like, why is she curled up in like a little thing? And then this is so weird, and I can't believe I'm admitting this. I thought she was a statue. You know how in the corner they had like the statues that were rolled up? I was like, oh, are they alive, the statues? So I honestly didn't really think of it like, oh, this is...
I think when he pulled that curtain off, he revealed the stone statue was like an angel or a prophet or somebody.
But I didn't really like read into it at that point too much because I didn't really know what I was looking for in this movie. I was like, I don't know what's happening. I'm just kind of letting it open up to me. The weirdest part I found was when he said she's an AI.
Yeah,
and I was like, what? This movie's crazy.
So I was going to, that was, again, that's where he said I thought it took an even stronger right turn. But I was thinking, and it just kind of occurred to me now as we're talking out loud about it, I wonder if that's kind of, so his whole thing is he's trying to like bring to light the fallacies of modern religion, like the big 3 religion. At one point he compares them, and he's kind of really, questioning them and interrogating them on different aspects of the Mormon religion at first that are making them uncomfortable. Then he goes into this big, diatribe about how religion is just these different forms and incarnations of monopoly, which was kind of funny. But then it's like
before Monopoly,
the game before the landlord. But then I wonder if those right turns were just this kind of different extreme levels of religion and these different types of extremists to kind of still retain people. Like he's specifically the prophet comes to life, and we find out later on that the prophet didn't in fact come to life. If the bodies were swapped at one point when they were distracted to make them believe that the prophet had come back to life. And when she does, she says this, scripted kind of thing to the girls and explains what the afterlife was, but then she finishes it by whispering, none of this is real.
Yeah.
And so she went off script and cast that seed of doubt in Sister Barnes's mind, which is why at that point, I think that's the point when he switched the key, put into Sister Paxton's coat, and then he kills Barnes because I think she's kind of catching on to him. And then he pulls a contraceptive out of her arm and tries to sell it that she was an AI or a robot and they were actually in a simulation. So it's just like this. It starts off by making them wonder whether or not he's lying about his wife in the house. Then it goes even further of, is he lying about the prophet or not? Then it goes even further, and is this even all real? So maybe that was just his kind of way of, working the extremes to still maintain control. Because that's what it is. Yeah, that's the big reveal. Control. His theory, I'd say that his thought on religion is that it's all just a form of control. That's all it has been. That's all it's used for. And they kind of get to that conclusion, where Sister Paxton's argument is that it's not about control. It's about something bigger. It's about caring for other people. It's about thinking about other people beyond yourself. So very, very interesting stuff. I mean, we've kind of jumped around different points of the movie, but I mean, what did you think of the performances? How did you feel about what was on screen?
I mean, I was a little nervous. I'm a big Hugh Grant gal myself, and since watching, was it The Gentleman we talked about?
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of a different role. He's always kind of played the bumbling, charming guy, or the bad guy, but just the bad boy type guy.
Yep, but still a love interest.
A love interest.
Yep.
And then you see him in The Gentleman, you're like, okay, this guy has range. I always believed it. And then this is why I wanted to see this movie. I wanted to see, it's Hugh Grant. It can't be that scary. And he did really well.
Mm-hmm.
I was the first couple scenes in the first room, I was a little bit like, ugh. And sometimes I get worried. I'm like, am I going to just see Hugh Grant? Or with any actor? Am I just going to see that actor? Or am I going to see the character? And at first, he just had a lot of Hugh Grantisms. And I was like, oh, I'm just going to see Hugh Grant. And then they get to the next room, his study, and he starts, his facial expressions change, and he looks at them in a different way. And his facial expression just shocked me. I was like, okay, I'm seeing it.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen him make that face before. So he's got it. And then it just kept going and going. But he still remained charming throughout. He does mess up a lot in the movie, I think, right?
How do you mean?
Well, she sees through him.
Well, I think Sister...
And because he's trying to just, cover up.
Yeah, I think Sister Barnes sees through him because I think she's the... So when the movie starts, I think we're led to believe that we're going to be following through and seeing this all unfold through Sister Barnes's eyes, where she's kind of the audience insert. She's noticing these little details that are kind of throwing off, kind of triggering our radar, whereas Sister Paxton's...
You don't really know what she's...
Well, no, but there are, she sees things she's the one that first questions, well, we can't come in unless your wife's home. Is your wife home? He's like, oh, yeah, come on in.
But
she's
the patterns, is she seeing the patterns?
Well,
or is Paxton really seeing the patterns and she just comes across as the naive
I think that she's just seeing that he's full of shit. I don't think she doesn't believe that there's a prophet that's going to come back to life. She's the one that first checks out that candle and finds out that that's all a ruse to make them think that the wife's in the house. Mm-hmm. She's the one that when they first go to the basement, she's trying to find a way out. She's formulating a plan. I think she sees through it and she's not really, she's not having her faith tested. It starts off, I was going to say, the movie starts off where she's the audience insert. We think we're going to follow her along. And they kind of have a discussion at the beginning of the movie, the two sisters, about, when they had that moment in life where belief in God was kind of confirmed and locked in. And Sister Paxton tells this kind of really immature, flighty story about how she started believing in God truly when she saw the shame in a woman's eyes who was caught having sex, which is a weird place to root your faith and where has that all stem from. And then it kind of cuts to Sister Barnes and she's kind of apprehensive and processing it. So you think that maybe the movie's going to be about her, confirming her faith. Maybe her faith isn't as strong. And this will be a movie where she discovers it or whatever. But then there's a big turn where we mention, where kind of abruptly, when Mr. Reed's plan starts going off the rails, he kills Sister Barnes. So she's out of the picture. And then we switch to Sister Paxton. Mm-hmm. So now it's her, throughout this movie, she's been following the lead. And now that she's on her own, she kind of rises to the occasion. And she starts remembering the advice that Barnes gave her. We need to question everything. We need to keep pushing him. We need to argue these points. We need to kind of keep him off guard. And she does that to great success, to the point where she figures out what this whole thing was. It's just been this big stage performance to kind of confirm his belief in control and
lock her in a cage.
And lock her in a cage, right? So, it's kind of a movie about people trying to prove their faith to themselves or to confirm that belief to themselves. Hugh Grant's doing as much in the movie. He goes through this elaborate ruse just to prove to them that you have their faith manipulated to reach any predetermined end.
But yeah. And what I like about that, and he's so determined in this movie to prove that there's no such thing as faith, that's all about control, to then, right before he dies, you see his vulnerability. He says to Paxton, pray. And it just made me think he is not entirely sure about his belief. Anyone who's that adamant about proving something, I always think, are they that sure of something?
Yeah, maybe just to jump back on that to clarify. So at one point during the climax, Sister Paxton has this letter opener that she uses to stab Mr. Reed with. But then he ends up following her, and he ends up stabbing her as well. So they're both mortally wounded at this point, right? Yeah, so that's when he approaches her, when he kind of feels like he's now dying, that he wants her to pray for him. He wants that kind of comfort.
So I find that really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So back to the Hugh Grant character, the performance, really liked it. It was probably the most intriguing part, I suppose. Him and Paxton I found to be very interesting, because her you don't expect a lot from, and when Barnes dies, I pressed pause. It was like halfway through the movie. I'm like, okay, so it kind of takes a whole twist, and now we're going into a new direction.
Yep.
I said this before, but a movie like Black Phone that we watched is Ethan Hawke, and he's a kidnapper. He kidnaps a boy. The boy has to escape. Your focus is, how is the boy going to escape? Your focus isn't, who's Ethan Hawke? Why is he like this? This movie, you're very intrigued by the main character.
Mm-hmm.
The main character.
Well, I think he's compelling. I think that's...
there's stuff to him. He's...
mm-hmm.
And...
Ethan Hawke didn't have much anything else in that movie other than just kind of looking creepy and being imposing.
Yeah, which is a lot of, like, thrillers.
Yeah, there's nothing to him. There's no depth, really.
Yeah, then there's, escape room movies, like, probably Escape Room, haven't seen it, or, like, Saw, where it's, like... The guy's just a creepy doll. No. Wait, who's the bad guy in that? The doll or the man?
No, the doll's just like a little prop. It's
Who's the man who's in everything?
He's the jigsaw killer. That's what they call him. He's the guy in the first one that was the pretend dead body on the floor.
And he's in like all the movies.
And he
plays
guy
like that guy.
Yeah, now Heretic, now shades of Saw too. It's this guy that's masterminding this plan to kind of punish people or prove a point. And
so his performance in character is interesting. I was focused. Barnes, good role for sure. Obviously, like you look at her and you think, what's going on? There's more behind what she's saying.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely gave me an Anya Taylor-Joy mixed with Jenna Ortega.
Yep, that's
vibe.
True.
And then you look at Paxton as kind of this naive, younger kid.
Yeah.
Who makes funny references to like the songs that they talk about and movies. It's kind of the little humor. Anyway, Barnes, good acting. Paxton, didn't expect her to take the lead role, and I thought she was great. And Topher Grace, though.
I don't understand it. It's like a blink and you miss it. You'd have no idea he was in the movie. He probably worked for one day. Like, I wonder if he's just friends. Yeah, like, I wonder if he's friends with these guys or, like...
His hair didn't look real, either.
No, because it was white. Well, he's playing Elder Kennedy.
Everything about it just seemed odd.
Anytime when, Eric Foreman's playing a character named Elder, it just makes me feel old. But, yeah, I don't know. That was a bit weird. Yeah, it was kind of... I liked how they did that because you kind of maybe speculate at the beginning that you are going to be following Barnes on this spiritual journey. But you find out later in the movie that she had her spiritual journey well before that. She had, her and her mother had sought out a church, and they'd kind of explored different options, different settings, and they landed on one that was good for them, that they felt strongly in. And she talks about how she had a near-death experience when she was a child and what she saw on the other side. So she goes to the point of saying that she had a near-death experience, was clinically dead, and there was nothing. She didn't see any afterlife, but despite that, she still has faith, and she's still a believer. So yeah, I mean, her character is really good. It builds up to that big reveal, but then she's killed, and then yeah, you switch to Paxton, who then has this growth in this last kind of third of the movie, kind of the climax of the movie, that I thought was really excellent. And it's that ending too, where the kind of all the loose ends are tied up. Paxton manages to escape from the house.
Is it totally tied up? Because Sister Barnes, and we'll say she dies, and at the end she ends up saving Sister Paxton.
So it's a question. Well, that's what I was going to get to. Like it wraps up, but they leave those things where was Sister Barnes, did she come back to life? Was she resurrected to save Sister Paxton, or did she not die at all? We don't know. That's the whole point. And then at the very last shot, when Paxton's out, a butterfly lands on her finger, which is a callback to earlier in the movie where she says if she were to die and be resurrected, she'd want to come back as a butterfly and land on her loved ones to let them know that she's okay. And so it's very, really interpretive. You can make of that what you will. You can say, oh, well, Barnes was never really dead. She just came back in time to save her. Or you could say, no, maybe she was dead and she was resurrected. Right, so it's a lot of interesting stuff in there. We talked to it's a very dense movie. There's, I think if you go back and watch it, the different references and metaphors and similes that you could pull out of the movie, there's so many of them. Like I was mentioning, there's the one point where they start in the house and then they go down to the basement, and then they go down to another basement, and then Sister Paxton goes down to a further basement, and she starts walking through these 3 doors. She makes her way back through all of that, but as she's running, there's a picture of Dante's Inferno, the 7 levels of hell. So I was trying to think, I was like, oh, okay, so each level is going down, getting her closer to hell, and then maybe that's, representative of that. And they touch on a lot of different religions, and there's a lot of imagery, especially in his kind of mini church that he's built in his basement to all sorts of different religions, right? So, and I'm not as well versed at religion at all, any religion, to kind of immediately recognize. Well, yeah, but that's more of a literary reference than kind of a biblical one. So there was kind of a lot of things that probably went over my head, just not having kind of a background or history in faith. I just kind of took it at face value. Some of the stuff stuck out, but I'm sure there's lots more nested in there that maybe somebody that's more informed on theology could kind of pick out and analyze.
It's hard, though. I grew up in the Christian faith, not Mormon. And he hasn't touched specifically on Mormonism. I mean, he does, but not exclusively, rather. And I found it hard to keep up because there's a lot of dialogue. And at the same time, I think I'd be Paxton. I'd be like, yeah, She's not really paying attention. She's like,
so this is the way?
Get me the hell out of here.
Get a...
Best be scooting.
Oh, yeah.
Is this the way?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. So I think most people would be Sister Paxton.
Pardon?
I think most people would be Sister Paxton in that scenario.
For sure.
Get me the fuck out of here.
But I forgot what I was saying. What are we talking about?
You're talking about your background, your Christianity, following along.
Yeah. So I'm not these days not someone to really rewatch movies as much.
No, I don't think I'd rewatch it.
I don't think I'd rewatch it, but if I did, it would be because of trying to gather that dialogue.
Yeah, isn't it funny?
A little better.
It used to be, I'd rewatch movies kind of all the time, but it was a kind of a symptom of just having cable, where they'd play movies on TV and you'd be channel surfing and be like, oh, a movie.
Oh, Shawshank Redemption's on.
I'm pretty sure I watched Shawshank Redemption 45 times on TBS. It's no joke. You couldn't get. I feel like it was on every Sunday. But now, if you want to go back and watch it, I mean, it's one of those things where pretty much every movie's at your fingertips. You could watch whenever. So, it's not something you just kind of stumble across anymore. You kind of have to actively go look for it. And
you have your movies too. Obviously, we grew up with rentals. 5 movies, 5 days, $5.
Yep.
And you'd rent the same movies. Or speaking of Hugh Grant,
my
mom and I would watch Notting Hill, Bridget Jones. Those are probably our top 2 movies.
Yep.
90s rom-coms, 2000s rom-coms. because you've watched them so much, they become part of your like comfort. So now those are the only ones I'd go back and rewatch. But any new movie we've seen in the last year, a couple years, I just wouldn't, unless it's a comedy. Superbad we've watched quite a bit.
The last couple of years, Superbad came out like 2000, almost came out like 20 years ago. Wow.
Well, we still watch it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is interesting. I wouldn't, again, probably not watch it. But there are some thrillers I would watch again.
Yeah. I think so too. I mean, I just don't. Obviously, there's movies that I watch again if I saw them. I was prompted and reminded of them. But yeah, I can't imagine I'd go out of my way to watch Heretic again. I'm glad I watched it. I enjoyed it. I'd recommend it. But I won't be putting it on like, I don't know, on a rainy Sunday afternoon. I'm not cuddling up on the couch and watching Heretic. Yeah, it's not exactly. I mean, the Hugh Grant. Yeah, of the Hugh Grant movies he picked, that's certainly not the one. I would even probably, I'd favor Notting Hill over Heretic in that situation. But yeah, I thought it was
favorite Hugh Grant movie.
My favorite Hugh Grant movie.
Yeah.
Oh. Jeez, I don't know.
Like what are you like? I like Hugh Grant's charming, innocent character. You like Hugh Grant's
I'm trying to think
romantic.
like I liked him in Notting Hill I think I liked, but I haven't seen, honestly, like I haven't seen a whole lot of Hugh Grant. I'm trying to think, like I've watched About a Boy's good. I've watched pretty much every rom-com that he's in, you know, as a
Mickey Blue Eyes.
Yeah, it's a function of marrying you. I've just seen Hugh Grant.
2 Weeks Notice.
Never seen 2 Weeks Notice. Four weddings and a funeral.
Oh my goodness, I forgot about that.
I've only seen pieces of that too, just when you were watching it. I like Hugh Grant. I think he's good. Like, I think he's a.
Does Hugh Grant like Hugh Grant?
No, Hugh Grant seems like a miserable cuss. Like, he just seems like the least appealing guy to hang around with.
I know, but
he's kind of like the British version of Larry David, it seems like.
They should get together.
Yeah, that was a missed opportunity. Curb should have had an episode with Hugh Grant. I would have loved that. Interesting. But yeah, good. I mean, good.
It's a good comparison.
Good movie too. I mean, there's still lots. There's stuff we didn't even touch on that I kind of went over my head. He's got that whole little model of his house, and he's got the figures positioned in it. So,
and how does she know to find the key from there?
Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe
there's some little.
Yeah, I guess that was kind of like a meta kind of commentary, and he's the god of this situation, and he's looking down on this and orchestrating it, kind of. So maybe that's it. As I say it out loud, I think I've kind of figured it out. But
answered your own question.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I think we said this as well. Just talking between us, not a ton of blood violence. I mean, there's like 2 deaths in it, and they're kind of gross. Like the first one, especially with the prophet, grossed me out. I don't like those little visual. I don't like blood. What am I thinking? Slasher type things at all. I watch them, but I don't like them. That was the only part I watched them.
Yeah.
That was the only part that grossed me out.
Yeah, that's why it's so shocking and so abrupt when he does kill her. It's because we'd mentioned a movie like Barbarian or Split or Saw that's kind of that similar. These people are trapped against their will. There's something going on. Those 3 movies always had this very strong underlying sense of violence, like Split and Saw especially. And you felt a lot of the tension was derived from, you know, are these guys going to have to cut their limbs off? Like, is this guy in Split going to kill these people? So you didn't really get that from Hugh Grant. I was never like, he doesn't seem violent. He just seems like...
You don't know
really creepy. And I was lulled into believing that he wasn't a violent person because he hadn't shown any signs of it up until that point. And then obviously it's proven out that he is. And then after that point, that element is part of the movie, and it does add to the tension with him and Paxton in the climax.
I also didn't know contraceptives would be in your arm. So I really did believe. I was like, oh my goodness, she's AI. This movie's... I don't know if I was amazed or not. I was like, and then I was like lying in bed going, what would it be like if she was? Oh my goodness. New movie idea. That.
Maybe it was AI. Maybe everything that came after that was a simulation and the butterfly was fake and they rebooted Sister Barnes' program to bring her back to life.
Maybe.
That could have been. We can't rule it out. Somebody could argue that. I'm sure somebody will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, recommend?
Yeah, I'd recommend. I got nothing else to say. I think we've exhausted every part of that movie that we could.
I'm sure if you're watching this, you've seen it. And if you haven't seen it, you're probably very confused. So
Yep.
I'd recommend watching it. And enjoy it or not enjoy it.
Yeah, enjoy it. Don't watch it on a Sunday afternoon and cuddle up on the couch.
No.
Yeah. Turn the lights low. Put your phone away. Get into it. It's good. You'll enjoy the ride for sure.
Yeah. Cool.
Cool.